Keir Starmer, once hailed as Labour's saviour, has suffered a devastating political collapse. Sources say he broke down in tears behind closed doors, overwhelmed by defections, rebellion, and plummeting public support. This was triggered by a stunning upset in the Runcorn and Helsby by-election. Nigel Farage's Reform UK seized a historic Labour stronghold by just 25 votes, the narrowest margin in British by-election history. But this wasn't just a local shock, it was a national wake-up call. Reform UK's victory sent a powerful message. Britain is done with the two-party system. What many once saw as a fringe movement is now a real threat to the political establishment. In the aftermath, Labour began to unravel. Disillusioned MPs defected to Reform UK, accusing Starmer of abandoning working-class values. Meanwhile, lifelong Labour voters, already furious over cuts to winter fuel payments and disability benefits, feel betrayed. All this unfolds while MPs collect bloated salaries and preach about grown-up politics. Kemi Badenoch struggles to hold her fractured party together. Both major parties now face the same growing threat, the meteoric rise of Reform UK. Westminster is in turmoil. For the first time in a generation, a genuine political revolution is brewing. Not born from optimism, but from deep despair. Inflation is crushing families. Wages remain stagnant, and trust in the government is rapidly disintegrating. Across the UK, people are working harder for less. NHS waiting lists have reached record highs. Crime rates are rising, and home ownership feels out of reach for many. Yet, from Labour to the Tories, voters hear the same hollow promises time and again. Enter Nigel Farage. Unpolished, unscripted, and unapologetically blunt. Reform's appeal lies in its authenticity and straightforwardness. Whether or not one agrees with their views, they tap into a raw public mood, one of betrayal, neglect, and a desperate hunger for change. Meanwhile, Labour continues to stumble. Scandals within the party deepen public disillusionment. One of the most damaging recent controversies involved Labour MP Lucy Powell during a BBC Radio 4 panel discussion. When fellow panellist Tim Montgomery referenced a Channel 4 documentary detailing the abuse of 5 women in grooming gangs, Powell dismissed it, saying, "Oh, we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?" Such moments only widen the growing divide between Labour and the voters they once vowed to serve. Her remark was met with swift and widespread condemnation for trivialising child exploitation and seemingly undermining the victim's trauma. Critics accused Lucy Powell of using a deeply serious and sensitive issue as a political shield, downplaying the suffering of real people to protect the party's image, over what they see as a deeply insensitive remark. During a recent appearance on BBC Radio 4's Any Questions, as Reform UK gains momentum, especially on issues where mainstream parties are viewed as evasive, Powell's words reignited outrage and a wider debate about political accountability on grooming gangs. On the programme, Powell dismissively responded to commentator Tim Montgomery's mention of a Channel 4 documentary exposing the abuse of 5 women by grooming gangs. Her comment, "Oh, we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?" drew condemnation across the political spectrum. Critics said her remarks trivialised child sexual exploitation and discouraged open discussion, further damaging public trust in Labour's handling of sensitive issues. Montgomery said discussions like these are often shut down with accusations of racism, creating a climate where vital issues are silenced out of fear of political backlash. He said Powell's remark wasn't just aimed at him or Reform UK, but reflected a broader reluctance to face uncomfortable truths. He warned Powell could face stronger backlash if survivors spoke out publicly. The fallout was swift. Conservative co-chair Nigel Huddleston condemned Powell's comments as inappropriate and part of a troubling pattern of dismissiveness. He accused Labour of underestimating public anger over grooming gangs and reversing earlier promises to investigate fully. Huddleston called for a full statutory public inquiry, suggesting Labour's failure raised serious concerns about protecting its own councils from scrutiny. This controversy has widened the gap between public demands for accountability and political leaders' handling of sensitive issues, deepening distrust in the establishment. The controversy has escalated into a political firestorm. Huddleston accused Labour of hesitating to launch an inquiry, fearing exposure of councils under its control, fueling allegations of a political cover-up. Despite Lucy Powell's apology, where she admitted poor communication and reaffirmed her commitment to tackling child exploitation, the backlash continues. Downing Street weighed in, accusing some political figures of weaponising child sexual exploitation for political gain. When asked if Prime Minister Keir Starmer agreed with Powell's framing, his spokesperson gave only a vague expression of disappointment over politicising the issue. This ambiguous response has deepened public frustration, raising doubts about Labour's seriousness in handling sensitive matters. The political storm highlights urgent questions about accountability, transparency, and genuine commitment to protecting victims. Critics firmly reject the claim that raising grooming gang concerns is political dog whistling. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said calls for a national inquiry are about justice, not opportunism, and called Number 10's response pathetic. Philp was supported by Marlon West, father of a grooming survivor featured in the Channel 4 documentary. Speaking to The Telegraph, West said calls for an inquiry reflect years of frustration with government inaction, not political attacks. He also criticised delays in publishing grooming data by Dame Louise Casey, suggesting Labour is stalling for political reasons. This criticism adds pressure on leaders to act transparently and respond to public demands for justice. The controversy surrounding grooming gangs has now become emblematic of a broader political disconnect between party elites and the communities they claim to represent. Critics argue that Labour's failure to respond decisively, coupled with dismissive rhetoric from figures like Lucy Powell, exemplifies a party more concerned with image management than meaningful action. As the public watches key issues brushed aside or politicised, faith in traditional leadership erodes further. Reform UK continues to exploit this void, positioning itself as the only party willing to confront uncomfortable truths head-on. Meanwhile, Labour faces internal paralysis. With leadership under siege and morale collapsing, the party struggles to offer a coherent message. Backbenchers are in open revolt, grassroots activists are disillusioned, and voters are walking away. Once reliable Labour heartlands are turning into battlegrounds where every vote is contested. In towns that have felt ignored for decades, Farage's directness resonates where Labour's cautious moderation falls flat. The political tide is shifting, and fast. Within the Conservative Party, the picture is equally bleak. Infighting, policy U-turns, and ethical scandals have left voters disenchanted. Kemi Badenoch, once a rising star, is now viewed by some within her party as a leader struggling to unite a divided base. Traditional Conservative values appear increasingly disconnected from the realities of working-class life. Reform UK's success in peeling away support from both major parties reflects a broader rejection of the status quo. The national conversation is changing. Where political discourse was once dominated by carefully managed narratives and sanitised soundbites, it is now being driven by raw frustration. Topics long considered too sensitive, too controversial, or too politically dangerous are now front and centre. Reform UK's rise is not just about policy. It's about tone, trust, and the feeling that someone is finally saying what people have been thinking for years. But with this shift comes responsibility. As Reform UK gains influence, it too will face scrutiny. The party's ability to convert anger into constructive governance will be tested. Critics argue that Farage's rhetoric lacks detailed policy backing. Others warn that tapping into public rage without offering real solutions risks deepening cynicism rather than solving it. Still, for now, Reform UK is riding a wave of momentum fueled not by hope, but by frustration, fatigue, and a desperate hunger for change. Keir Starmer's leadership may be the first casualty of this new political age, but he won't be the last. The current crisis is bigger than any single politician or party. It's about a system that, in the eyes of many, has failed. If the major parties cannot adapt, they risk being swept aside entirely. The coming general election is not just another vote. It may be the moment Britain redraws its political map for a generation. Whether this transformation will bring renewal or further instability remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the old rules no longer apply, and the future of British politics hangs in the balance. As the political landscape fractures, a new era is beginning to emerge, one where loyalty to traditional parties no longer guarantees electoral success. The electorate is more volatile, more sceptical, and more willing to abandon historic allegiances in favour of alternatives that speak more directly to their lived realities. Reform UK's breakthrough in Runcorn and Helsby was not merely a fluke or protest vote. It signalled a deeper political awakening, one rooted in a collective sense of betrayal by those in power. People are no longer content with promises. They want action, accountability, and leaders who understand the consequences of political failure. In working-class communities, especially across the North and Midlands, the sentiment is clear. They feel used, forgotten, and spoken down to. The traditional Labour message of solidarity and social justice has, in their eyes, been diluted by corporate politics and metropolitan elitism. Meanwhile, Conservative promises of economic revival have failed to materialise, leaving towns scarred by austerity, stagnation and vanishing opportunities. In this environment, Reform UK has not only found a message, it has found a mission. Yet this moment is not without danger. Political realignment often brings with it instability, and the decline of long-standing institutions can leave power vacuums that are easily exploited. If Reform UK cannot transition from protest to policy, or if its rise further fractures Parliament without delivering governance, the country may find itself adrift. Political turbulence, economic uncertainty, and social division could deepen without a steady hand at the helm. There is also concern among some observers that the tone of political debate is becoming increasingly confrontational and divisive, with nuance sacrificed for outrage and complexity reduced to soundbites. Nonetheless, many see this shake-up as necessary. For too long, politicians have operated within a bubble, detached from the economic and social realities of the people they represent. The cost of living crisis, the NHS backlog, the housing shortage, and rising crime are not abstract policy issues, they are daily struggles. And while leaders debate in Westminster, real lives are deteriorating outside of it. Reform UK's ascent, then, is not just about ideology, it's about urgency. It reflects the growing demand for a politics that is less performative and more responsive. Labour now faces its most significant existential threat in decades. If it cannot reconnect with its base and rebuild trust, it risks permanent decline. The Conservatives, too, are under siege, squeezed between centrist disillusionment and a resurgent right. And while Nigel Farage remains a polarising figure, his political instincts have once again tapped into a national mood, one that demands disruption, not moderation. His critics may question his methods, but few can deny the impact he is having on the political conversation. The weeks ahead will be crucial. As the general election campaign unfolds, voters will be watching closely, not just for promises, but for authenticity and resolve. The old party playbooks are no longer effective. In this new political era, clarity beats caution, conviction beats compromise, and ignoring public anger is no longer an option. Britain stands on the brink of a transformation. Whether that change leads to renewal or further fragmentation will depend not only on the outcome of the election, but on what those in power choose to do with the message they've been sent. The storm has arrived, the centre is breaking, and in the echo of collapse, a new political order is waiting to be born. As the political temperature rises, the media too finds itself under scrutiny. Once viewed as the gatekeepers of public discourse, many outlets are now seen as extensions of the establishment, more interested in managing narratives than exposing truths. Reform UK and its supporters frequently accuse mainstream media of bias, alleging that coverage is slanted to protect legacy parties and discredit emerging challengers. This sentiment has resonated with large swathes of the public, especially among those who feel their concerns are routinely ignored or downplayed. Social media, meanwhile, has become the new battleground. Clips of Farage speaking bluntly in town halls, community centres, and local radio interviews go viral not because they are polished, but because they are raw. In contrast, Labour and Conservative campaigns often rely on controlled messaging and choreographed appearances, which increasingly come across as artificial. In a time of crisis, people crave honesty, even if it's imperfect. That authenticity has become a rare and powerful currency in British politics. Amid all this, political institutions themselves are under pressure.